So as I said, today we are celebrating the feast of Christ the King. But when we seriously think about Jesus as a king and his life on this earth, it doesn't go well together. Especially today's gospel, picturing Jesus as a helpless person hanging on a tree, and he looked quite defeated. I remember there was a story I heard when I was a child. They said it really happened in India. The story goes like this. A Christian child brought another child who was not Christian into a church. So they were going around, seeing everything, all the statues and things like that. And they came to the altar, and just behind the altar they had this crucifix, and on that, Jesus was hanging. So this child, who was not a Christian, asked the Christian child, "Who is he?" Then the other child, the Christian child, told him, "He is our God." And the other child said, "How can he be a God? I mean, he looks quite helpless, and he needs help. How can he help others? He needs to be saved. How can he save others?" Certainly the child did not have any answer to it. So if you also think seriously about it, we don't get an answer to it. It looks Jesus is quite helpless on the cross. And as these people, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the soldiers, and even the other, thief, mocked him, saying, "How could he save himself when he is not able to save his own life?" So that's, my dear friends, when we put together the world's perception, the world's standard of kingship, and God's standard of kingship, we see this paradox. A paradox that confronts the world's understanding of power, success, and authority. Because our world believes that power must be seen in titles, influence, wealth, noise, dominance. These are the marks by which society measures greatness. If someone commands crowds, if their voice shakes institutions, if their image goes viral, then the world calls them powerful. But today's feast asks us to look at the power through the eye of God, not through the gaze of the world. We know, as I said, our King, Jesus, he defied all norms of the world, right from the beginning, from his birth onwards. So he is a king who defies every ordinary norm of kingship. If you remember, he entered Jerusalem not on a war horse, but on a donkey. He reigns not from the throne, but from a cross. He wears not a golden crown, but one made of thorns. He rules not by force, but by love. He conquers not by killing, but by love, by forgiving. To the world, he seemed helpless, unable to save himself, defeated, abandoned by his own, even God the Father, scorned, mocked as King of the Jews, humiliated, stripped of dignity, and powerless, nailed to a cross. Yet in this seemingly defeat, the fullness of God's authority was revealed. The cross was his coronation. Compassion was his scepter. Mercy was his decree. Love was his law. Christ shows us that true kingship is not about raising oneself above others, but lifting humanity from its brokenness. So it is a paradox to the world which believes in the validation of externality. We live in an age obsessed with the externals. How many followers do we have? How successful do I appear? Does the world notice me? Do people respect my title, my image, my influence? These are the questions we always ask right from the moment we wake up from our sleep. Even in the church, even in the families, and even in our personal lives, we are often tempted to measure worth the way the world does. But the feast of Christ the King whispers something radically counter-cultural. True power is invisible. True greatness is humble. True authority is rooted in love. Our King's authority doesn't need applause. He doesn't need to prove himself. He doesn't need to intimidate or dominate. His power flows from the depth of his heart, a heart that beats for the least, the lost, and the lonely. The question we should ask ourselves, have you forgotten this King? This feast forces us to ask a painful but necessary question. Have you forgotten our King? Have you begun behaving like everyone in the world? Caught in competition? Trapped in comparison? Obsessed with status? Hungry for recognition? Do we follow the world's kings, the kings of ego, pride, and self-promotion, instead of the King who kneels to wash others' feet? If Christ is truly our King, then His values must shape our choices, our lives. His humility must shape our relationship. His mercy must shape our judgments. His sacrificial love must shape our identity. To claim Christ as King means to allow His cross to challenge every pattern of pride in our lives. So today, Christ, the King, inviting us, He is putting us an invitation before us, not with the threats, but a loving call for us. He says, follow me, not the path of domination, but the path of transformation. Choose me, not the kingdom of noise, but the kingdom of truth. Serve me, not by rising above others, but by lifting others up. His kingdom is built not by force, but by faithfulness. Not by conquering lands, but by conquering hearts. Not by power that crushes, but by love that restores. If we allow this King to reign in our hearts, then our pride must become humility. Our fear must become trust. Our bitterness must become mercy. Our selfishness must become service. And our lives become a proclamation of His kingdom. So, my dear friends, today as we are meditating upon this kingship of our Christ, the world continues to crown the powerful. We should remember that. But today we choose to crown the crucified one, the King who reigns from the cross, the King whose victory is love, the King whose kingdom is eternal. Let us return to Him. Let us recognize Him, and let us honor Him and live like citizens of His reign. Amen.